You notice it again. The conversation is still going. People are talking, laughing, exchanging stories, but your mind quietly drifts somewhere else. Not because you're bored, not because you dislike them, but because something inside you keeps pulling away. You nod, you respond when spoken to, you play your part. Yet the entire time, a quiet thought sits in the background of your mind. You would rather be alone right now. And that thought feels strange, because you know what it looks like from the outside. People assume loneliness means sadness, silence means emptiness. Being alone must mean something is missing. But for you, it often feels like the opposite. Sometimes, the moment you finally walk away from people, close the door behind you, and sit in a quiet room, you feel something you hadn't noticed all day, relief. Not dramatic relief, just a small, quiet exhale you didn't know you were holding. The kind that slowly settles in your chest, and suddenly your mind begins to move again. Ideas return, thoughts reconnect. Your breathing feels deeper. It's almost like your brain had been running in the background all day, forced into a smaller space than it needed. And only now, in silence, it can stretch again. But this feeling didn't always make sense to you. In fact, for a long time, it probably made you question yourself. Because everywhere you look, the world seems to reward the opposite. People who talk constantly, people who thrive in groups, people who fill every moment with noise. They appear confident, social, successful. And slowly, without even realizing it, you start wondering if something about you is wrong. Why does being around people drain you so quickly? Why do conversations that seem effortless for others leave your mind feeling strangely exhausted? Why do you find yourself replaying things later? Small details, phrases, tone of voice, expressions, long after everyone else has already moved on. It starts small. You're in a group discussion. Someone makes a quick comment. Everyone laughs. The conversation moves on instantly. But your mind doesn't. It pauses. It begins analyzing the words, the intention, the layers beneath what was said. Was it sarcasm? Was it insecurity disguised as humor? Was there something deeper hidden in the way they said it? And by the time your brain finishes exploring all of that, the conversation has already moved 3 topics ahead. You're still there physically, but mentally, you're somewhere else entirely. Over time, you start noticing the same pattern repeating itself. Morning meetings where people speak quickly, but say very little. Social gatherings where the same stories are told again and again. Conversations that feel strangely shallow, even when everyone else seems completely satisfied with them. You try to engage, you try to stay present, but something inside your mind keeps asking questions that never get answered. Why are we talking about this? What does this actually mean? Is anyone really saying what they think? Or are we all just performing the version of ourselves that feels easiest for everyone else to accept? These questions don't appear loudly. They sit quietly in the background of your mind, but they never fully leave. And slowly, something else begins to happen. You start noticing how much mental energy it takes to constantly adjust yourself around others. Not in an obvious way, but in small, invisible ways. Choosing which thoughts to say and which ones to keep to yourself. Simplifying ideas because explaining them fully would take too long. Laughing at jokes you don't actually find funny. Pretending you didn't notice something uncomfortable in the room because pointing it out would make things awkward. None of this feels dramatic in the moment. But over time, it becomes exhausting. Because every interaction requires a kind of quiet translation. You translating yourself and translating everyone else. Until eventually, your brain begins craving something it rarely receives during the day. Space, not social distance, mental space. A place where your thoughts don't need to be edited. Where silence doesn't feel strange. Where nothing is expected from you. That's why when you're finally alone, your mind begins to unfold in ways it couldn't before. Thoughts connect to other thoughts. Ideas stretch further. Questions become deeper. You revisit conversations not out of anxiety, but curiosity. You explore possibilities that never had time to appear in the middle of fast-moving discussions. And suddenly being alone doesn't feel like emptiness. It feels like clarity. But this creates a strange tension in your life. Because the more comfortable you become with solitude, the more confusing social expectations start to feel. People assume being alone means something is missing, so they try to fix it. They encourage you to go out more, meet more people, fill your time with activity, as if silence were a problem that needs solving. But what they don't realize is this. For some minds, Constant interaction isn't stimulation. It's noise. Noise that slowly pulls attention away from something deeper. And if you've ever experienced that deeper place, you start noticing how rarely it appears when you're surrounded by people. Not because people are bad, but because most environments simply move too fast for deeper thinking to exist. Small talk replaces reflection, quick reactions replace understanding, and the pace of conversation rarely leaves room for the kind of thinking your mind naturally prefers. So you adapt, you participate, but somewhere inside you, a quiet preference begins forming. You start protecting your time alone. Not dramatically, not aggressively, just quietly. You decline certain invitations. You leave gatherings earlier than others. You choose evenings that involve silence instead of constant activity. And occasionally, someone notices. They might say something like, "You should get out more," or "You're too quiet," or even, "You spend too much time in your own head." And for a moment, those words linger longer than you'd like, because part of you wonders if they might be right. Maybe you are isolating yourself. Maybe this preference for solitude means you're slowly disconnecting from the world. Maybe something about this pattern is unhealthy. So you try again. You spend more time around people. You stay longer at gatherings. You push yourself into conversations even when your mind feels tired. And sometimes it works. Sometimes you enjoy it. But eventually that same quiet feeling returns. The one that gently reminds you how different your mind feels when it finally has space again. And slowly you begin noticing something else, something subtle. When you're alone, your mind doesn't become empty. It becomes active, not chaotic, focused, thoughtful, creative. Questions appear that never surfaced during the day. Connections form between ideas that once seemed unrelated. You start exploring concepts, patterns, possibilities. Sometimes it feels like your brain has been quietly collecting pieces of information all day. And solitude is the moment those pieces finally come together. This is the moment many people misunderstand, because from the outside, it looks like withdrawal. But internally, it's engagement, a deeper kind. But here's the truth most people never say out loud. For certain kinds of minds, solitude isn't where thinking stops. It's where thinking begins. And once you recognize that, a quiet question begins forming inside you. If your mind becomes clearer in silence, why spend your entire life surrounded by noise? Not isolation, not withdrawal, just enough space to hear your own thoughts again.